Welcome everyone. My name is Forrest Evans. I'm a director of product here at PagerDuty. I've been managing the Rundeck program for I think over 5 years now. If you watch, release notes videos or other videos, my face should be familiar. We have Martin, also Martin, if you want to say hello.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might be familiar to people that live in the EMEA territory. We've been doing these meetups for years now. But yeah, hi everybody. My name is Martin van Son. As you can hear, I'm having a bit of a runny nose and a dialect coming out of Amsterdam. But yeah, love to join sessions like these. I've been with PagerDuty for 4 years. Talk about the platform every day. I think my counter is like 1,700 talks about the topic in total. So yeah, definitely a lot of experience and yeah, happy to join.
And then we also have Phil joining us. Phil, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Austin. I'm a fractional engineering leader, cloud DevOps consultant, and recently much more into AI product development and strategy. And I'll do a little bit of a deeper intro later.
Hi everyone, I'm Shanda. I'm Community Program Manager at PagerDuty. I'm based of Lisbon, Portugal. I'm here just organizing fun stuff, fun ways to interact, learn more about PagerDuty and Rundeck, and managing our online community.
If you want to catch me again next week, I will be doing the release notes. Our version 5.14 is due to come out Monday. I think it is still scheduled for Monday at this point. And I will be doing my usual live stream to recap what's in that release on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. All of the past release notes videos are also on our doc site. You can go back to each version release page, try to get the video up there as soon as it's available, and you can see what else happened in the past as well. And then I feel like I'm talking about all the stuff I've been doing. I don't want to do that anymore, but we did do a webinar yesterday. I jumped on with Dutch. He was definitely the star of the show, showing us all of the things you can do with Ansible and Rundeck together. That is both open source versions of the product. Ansible plugins available with Rundeck open source, so still perfectly applicable to these use cases as well. And that should be in the links as well. There's a recap video. You can watch all of that demo and goodness there. And Shanda, how do we get more fills? Not that he can be duplicated, but how can people join and as a speaker on these talks with us?
Yeah, sure. So I'm happy to tell you all about this. There's a quick form that already put the link in the chat. You can write to us as Phil did. Thank you so much for participating. That was the first time that we put the form out. So it's pretty successful that we have Phil here with us because of that. If you're using Rundeck by PagerDuty open source, or also the automation commercial offerings at PagerDuty, you have something to share, your experience, a project, a use case, something that you're trying out, an experiment. It can be a lightning talk, it can be a short presentation, a workshop. You name it, just come here and show us what you're doing with the product. And we also offer mentorship. So imagine it's the first time that you're talking in public. And then these guys here can help you out, and all the product team as well. And it can be also a good opportunity for you to have content on YouTube, because we upload the presentations on YouTube. So if you're thinking about, like, I don't know, applying for conferences or just scaling up your curriculum, that's something really cool to do. So just click on the link on the chat and write to us what you're doing with PagerDuty. Can't wait to see you here next time. And then my next one, thanks, Forrest. We don't have to end this conversation here. We can have it started and continued at PagerDuty Commons. It's our online community. You can get your questions about the product, not only Rundeck, but like all PagerDuty operations cloud. Ask your questions, learn with other users, and you can join local groups to organize meetups and next events. All things PagerDuty sign up and be part of the community.
But now I'm going to hand it over to Phil, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the Swiss Army knife here.
All right. Thanks, Forrest. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Great you were able to show up to today's session. And thanks for the PagerDuty and Rundeck team for having me here today. Let's see if I can switch slides here. There we go. So today I'm going to talk about my experience with Rundeck over the many years, as we'll talk about that I've used it. Some use cases I've used it for, certainly not everyone, but some of the key ones. How I've found the most success structuring things in Rundeck, and why I recommend Rundeck to many of the companies and clients that I work for. So just again, quick, slightly deeper introduction. My journey, my career arc sort of began with a deep operational and DevOps background, transitioning to software development, engineering leadership, and recently in AI product development. I've used Rundeck throughout that entire life cycle in various different ways, which we'll talk about today. Most recently, serving as an SVP of engineering at Plus Company. It's a network of marketing, advertising, and related agencies. We worked on the AOS product, which was a platform for marketing measurement and optimization. This year I launched my consulting practice, specializing in all the things I love. So I get to just do that sort of full time. That's fractional engineering leadership, cloud and DevOps consulting, and AI product strategy. And I'm partnering and doing a lot of work with Echelon, which is a early stage VC and founder collective. I'm helping scale the data science division. So we do work, within the portfolio companies, for companies outside of that, in a lot of different data science, data engineering type capacities. I'm actively on the bench and working with clients there. All right, enough about me. So my experience with Rundeck is pretty extensive, and by the numbers here, the first time I used Rundeck in production, if you can believe it, it's 2011. It was super early on. We used it. First use case was to orchestrate running Chef. If anybody remembers, like ops code Chef back in the day, this is pre-Ansible. I don't know if it's still around. Maybe it is.
It's still on my slides, Phil. So Chef
it is.
Yeah.
All right, good to hear. I knew one of the guys that founded Chef. I should check in with him. So we were orchestrating running Chef on a ton of different machines in a data center, and then AWS sort of came along, and so we were orchestrating running operations on those machines and EC2 instances in the cloud. And so it was great for sort of that remote connectivity into machines. And that was sort of like, my first delving into the Rundeck ecosystems. Since then, what a lot of these numbers reflect, at least 9 companies where I've directly deployed Rundeck for some capacity, at least by my own count, recommended it further than just those 9. By my best guess, I went and talked to a few people. At least I'm going to go with 800,000 total job executions, probably over 1 million for some of the instances that I haven't seen in a long time. Thousands of jobs created, hundreds of cloud and data center instances orchestrated, and dozens, I would say, of use cases.
But fun fact, 2011, I don't even have tracked as a version anymore. It would have been in the 1.0 series. The earliest version I have tracked is 2.0. And I was able to go back and find out that we released that on January 31st of 2014. So you were 3 years even ahead of that.
It was
I think the only person that I know that's used Rundeck longer than that is Greg Schuler, who still works for us. That was a founder.
Yeah, he was a founder. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember reaching out to him really, really early on.
Yeah, that would have been in the very pure open source days. DT might have still been called DTO Solutions. back in the day. That was
I only knew it as Rundeck,
sort of
so maybe it was like right when they branded. I'm not
came
sure.
out of that. Yeah, I did a whole Rundeck history series. I'll see if we can dig out some of that content and send it to you later.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So use cases. Let's talk about a few of those. So unless you're brand new to Rundeck, you already know a lot of this. This is Rundeck's bread and butter use case. Or I kind of think of it as the entry point or the umbrella around all of the other N number of specific use cases you can use it for. And it's for technical and non-technical users alike. So very simple interface with a variety of job option types, a variety of things you can do with that job, the ability to use any language to automate tasks. It's got guardrails around things. Your projects are wrapped with role-based access control to limit, scope, and it's very granular. You can do a lot with it. Fixed, hidden, validated options and values, secrets management to store and abstract secrets, auditing and notifications. So these are all things you get for free. I don't mean in the like open source free sense. I mean, when you deploy Rundeck, these are all things that you don't have to think about when you're doing your own automation, right? This is all there for you. You basically just add code. All right. So that's the first one there. The next one, obviously, one of the reasons we're here, incident response. So this is a use case I sort of grew into. I would say maybe picked it up in 2017, 2018. It took a while, but there's deep integration with PagerDuty nowadays. So I'd previously used this with Opsgenie. Also got in really, really early with Opsgenie when it was still running out of the founder's garage, way before the Atlassian acquisition, and I think they recently just killed it too. But anyway, that was something I had to do all the wiring for. It was very clunky. It was very basic. You had to manage the system separately. But the PagerDuty integration is far superior. You can trigger automations directly from an incident, see what was run sort of bidirectionally and what happened, enable frontline responders to run diagnostics. And it's just faster, more transparent, more of a workflow than anything that sort of preceded it within Rundeck. And you're less reliant on like, oh shoot, something happened. Hey, DevOps or SRE person, go figure it out and handle it for me, right? You can set up runbooks to do things and automate that yourself. All right, and feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast here. Finally, so my favorite use case that we'll talk about today, software deployments. So I maybe have a little bit of a different take on the traditional CI/CD model than many. I think CI and CD are fundamentally different things that don't necessarily have to happen in sequence every time. Like I love GitHub Actions and Bitbucket pipelines as much as the next person, and they absolutely have their place. They're critical for running tests, running builds, and it's great for developer control over that process without having to have a DevOps person set up, everything for you. But deployment is a more critical operation with, higher risk, need for observability. And I don't know about you, but with CI, I just sort of care that test pass and the build artifacts were created, right? That's your checkpoint. It's kind of a gate. If it didn't happen, you got a problem, you have to go fix it. Nothing in production's broken. You just kind of have to go, figure that out and fix it. With CD though, I care very much what happened, right? So what changed in my production system? When did it happen? By whom? For what reason? Things like that. So Rundeck as your deployment hub makes a lot of sense to me, right? So this allows a model of, at least how I've implemented it. We'll take a quick look here in a second, but it allows a model of build once, deploy many, right? So unlike if you're doing all your deployments in GitHub Actions, let's say, you check into a branch, you run that runs the build and test, and then it automatically deploys. And then you have to, in a lot of cases, you have to sort of rebuild to do it again, or you may have environments tied to branches or things like that. Then, for Rundeck, when you sort of separate those two things and you allow Rundeck to handle the deployment, and you put a human in the middle, which I think is important. that allows you to take that one build that happened one time, and then you deploy it to n number of environments. So imagine an environment with dozens of microservices. I've worked in several of those. With build tools only, you're managing deployments across potentially dozens of repos. You've got code sprawl, you've got history and activity decentralized across 20 different repositories. You've got largely, if you're deploying kind of the same way, you've got a lot of duplicate code in those separate GitHub Actions files or Bitbucket Pipelines files or what have you. So with Rundeck, you get reusable jobs, a central reusable job, keeping your code dry, your deployment code dry. You get centralized logging and auditing, secrets. We talked about that, not living in some external system. If you're running Rundeck on-prem, all those secrets sit on-prem. Projects and RBAC, so control who can deploy to which environments. So, in a lot of cases, and we'll see this, I would separate, production deployment jobs from development or test environment deployment jobs by project, such that only certain people have the ability to get into the production project to do those deployments. And just last, why not just, what are some other reasons you wouldn't want to just run everything in GitHub Actions? So again, your CD is fractured out into several different places and histories. Another benefit is with Rundeck, you can have separate repositories and deploy multiple things together. So you may have the concept of a 1.5 release that has 5 different microservices that you want to deploy all at the same time. You can do that. You can wrap that very easily with Rundeck.
Phil, could you explain like 5 different repositories? How do you mean 5 different? I mean, probably all on Git, or are you talking about Git and other like Jenkins as well? Or
yeah, you could. So so this would be the concept of, and you're right. You may have one repository. So I tend to keep one repository, a 1-to-1 ratio between a repository and a deployable unit, right? So I might have a code repository in Bitbucket. I might have another one in Jenkins, and they're doing something. They're running tests. They're generating build artifacts, and maybe that's a like a container image and then a database migration, and they're in separate places, separate repositories. But you want to orchestrate the deployment of those two things together. They have to go hand in hand. It's very easy in a central place like Rundeck to do those, in series.
now you're absolutely right that we can combine those all for sure. But I'm still wondering, like, why would you want to have multiple different repositories, or do you say it's because if it's like the legacy situation, it's just what it is?
So
No, I think
we actually have multiple different repositories just to manage Rundeck. When you look at the microservice architecture, you're dealing with just unique units of code that are, that stand on their own, right? One example is our plugins repository, right? That's actually an open source org that you can go and see a lot of our plugins that we bundle into the product. In order to manage those plugins and keep them consistent, we can use Rundeck jobs to go and update those repositories, right? If we have underlying, there is some code that is reused throughout them, like, what is it based on, or we need to go update this package across 5 or 6 different repositories. Those make sense to keep individual, but we need to do the same thing across them.
Right. Well, let me real fast here. I'll just sort of run you through. I tried to sort of diagram what this kind of process looks like. So what we're looking at in the upper left there, we've got a developer who commits and gets their PR merged in GitHub. GitHub then sends a message to Slack saying, hey, this build just completed. What do you want to do? There's a couple buttons. You can either view the build, which takes you to GitHub Actions, or click the deploy button. So the deploy button will trigger a Rundeck job right from Git. So this is sort of your GitOps type model. Rundeck then from there does several things. It deploys whatever it is you're deploying to the target. It records it in Grafana, the deployment happened, and then notify the developer, as you can see there, also in Slack, that hey, the deployment finished successfully, or maybe it failed or timed out or something like that. So you get that GitOps sort of experience with Rundeck on the back end, and using GitHub for the CI part and Rundeck for the CD part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. This is exactly what we do with our documentation site, actually, right? Our documentation site code, after I, push or merge something to that main channel, we have a Rundeck job that will go and say, all right, let's refresh the production site. So when it hits the main branch, it doesn't automatically go. But we're able to share, well, let me put it this way. The engineering team was able to share the ability to me to refresh the site, because I didn't want to memorize or learn all the different Git commands and all the magic to make that happen. I said, I need a play button so that I can refresh this and not ask you guys 3 times a day as I'm, doing revamps. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. So I had them write a Rundeck job, and we, like, it is exactly the same flow. Like, we commit it.
Yeah.
We go and deploy it, using Rundeck. It comes back and lets us know in Slack, hey, this, the site was refreshed.
Yeah, that I briefly worked for a company called Clear Capital, where they had I had already started in a kind of a different division and went and set this little ecosystem we're seeing here up, to find out later that in kind of a different division they were doing the exact same thing. So I think it's kind of a common model, or a great way to use Rundeck in this process. All right, so this brings to mind kind of a question, at least for me: do you really need an IDP? So I found myself sitting in IDP product demos as a DevOps person, as a very what's the right word? I guess there's a lot of tenets of DevOps, and I've always sort of leaned towards the community side of it, getting people sort of self-empowered to do their own thing, not to create an isolated DevOps team. The idea is to sort of democratize a lot of abilities. And so I got naturally interested in IDPs. It's like, great, hey, we can put something in front of engineers, make sure there's guardrails. It all sounds great. And then I find myself sitting in these product demos going, wait, couldn't we just do this with Rundeck? Doesn't Rundeck kind of do this? Wouldn't this feature that they're talking about and they're trying to sell me take my DevOps engineer like an hour to go implement in Rundeck? So let's look at this line by line. So, and these are kind of the common IDP features. This is not, my own sort of distilled list here. I did look this up. So self-service deployment, so we'll look at the IDP feature and then how Rundeck can cover it. So self-service deployments, obviously, we've been talking about that already. You can orchestrate deployments with any language around any deployment mechanism. So we're going to look at a Terraform example here in a bit. It can be anything. It can be, SLS, serverless framework. I've used it for all kinds of different things, ECS, Kubernetes, what have you. So obviously it's up to you to write a little bit of the wrapper code, but like Terraform does the hard work for you. You just have to call it. So does serverless framework, things like that. So that's not a hard thing to wrap into a Rundeck job. Git-based triggers and GitOps, webhooks from GitHub Actions, triggering job. We just looked at that. That's very, very simple to do. Human in the loop workflows, right? Webhook integrations for approvals, like the Slack deploy button that we just saw, right? Very simple to implement. Service catalog templates. So you can just have parameterized jobs in Rundeck that maybe it's, a Terraform to spin up a new environment. So you hard code some parameters, you expose some other ones in a Rundeck job, there's your template. I mean, it really is that simple. Sane governance. So Rundeck has role-based access control, logging, alerting, integration into myriad systems with plugins. Very deep. You can go into other ecosystems there. State awareness. So this is one that Rundeck doesn't cover. You do have to roll your own a little bit. Kind of requires an external layer. I'll show you just a brief glance at sort of how I've done that. This being, again, what's deployed where. Rundeck is very, sort of an event that happens, right? And you do get the logging and alerting, but like if you want to know, hey, what version of this microservice is deployed to my UAT environment right now? It's you kind of have to fish through logs. So, but other than that, I mean, pretty much every IDP use case, unless you've got some really extensive needs, I've found Rundeck being able to cover.
I know you're just throwing out one brief example there, but I do have a way to solve that one.
I'm interested.
Right? If it's a node, right? If it's showing up in your node inventory, you can layer on node sources. So if you have a node source that picks up that version, you can store that as an attribute on that node, and then also use that in future jobs of, hey, give me any that are lower than this version number.
Might have to pick your brain at the end.
Yeah, there's definitely some state there. I think that some of the IDP, just kind of riffing off your list, I think that some of the IDPs are out there are really good at consuming a bunch of information and storing that or presenting that. I don't know if that's intended to be a soft lead into Martin's part, but it can be, right? We have that capability. It's just not what Rundeck has been built for thus far.
And Phil, I must say this is also in my agenda lately. We as a company have been talking a lot with Backstage as an IDP. And when I see what they do, like having a software catalog with information or documentation, and that's what I also see like that could be, of value for a dedicated IDP to interconnect with our software, which is what we're going to do. But many of the points you have a fair discussion point. True, I see that too.
And then one side topic that maybe if anyone in chat wants to chime in and see if this is an idea or something that they would use, I have explored building an official GitHub action for Rundeck. I wonder if there's an appetite for that. I don't know if you've just been using generic webhooks for that, but
it has been generic webhooks. I've been thinking about doing that as well.
Yeah, I ran it actually by AI. We'll talk a little bit about coding with AI later, but I ran it through AI and it was able to give me a kind of a starter of what would be a GitHub, an official GitHub action that you could just install.
That's great.
We would host and manage. So.
All right. So next, as promised, I want to just kind of dig in a little bit into how I've personally found the most success structuring Rundeck projects and jobs over the years. And we're going to go through just a few slides here, the example of deploying something. So starting here, what we're looking at is one of my clients' Rundeck instances. Forgive the version being like probably about a year old at this point. It's on my list to update them. But here you can see just 4 projects in this one. The first thing to point out is that I've separated, as we described earlier, dev from production deployments into 2 different projects. And as you might guess, and as I mentioned earlier, this is for role-based access control. So not everybody sees the prod deployments project, right? Not everybody has the ability to go deploy to production, but you can control who can do that. And the projects basically contain identical deployment jobs, and they're just wrapper jobs, which we'll take a look at here in a minute, or what I call wrapper jobs. That engineers are able to execute to deploy their products. They just basically add a few here. Here's the environment I want to deploy to. Here's the version. Go. There's lots of different implementations of that. We'll just kind of go over a very simple use case. And then the shared tools project. So this is where I put what I call, and I'm sure you guys have official names for these, function jobs, for lack of a better term. So these jobs contain the actual code, which performs the thing that you're trying to do, right? It's agnostic to environment. They're agnostic to, a number of different things. What you're deploying, where you're deploying it.
I think what it's called depends on your background. Our developers, as they built out these, they call it the libs folder, right? They're so used to the coding world of it. Others definitely call it something else. Shared tools makes a lot more sense to me, but yeah, the background. I think it's funny how the background comes in when you're architecting these things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, either call them function jobs or like utils jobs, utility jobs, right?
Yeah.
Basically, you don't run anything in there directly. right? It's just meant to be called from somewhere else. And so this is really what keeps your code dry, right? So you're not duplicating automation code from one, job to the next. In fact, some of these jobs that are in the shared tools or utils project, they themselves call other jobs, right? So it's just like functional programming where you write a function that it has, a certain set of parameters to it. In our case here with jobs, they're job options. And if you think of it that way, you can get away with very little code, almost no duplication, and a much more reliable sort of activity as you're going. Just think of it like functional programming. And the nice thing is all that's transparent to the user running it. They don't know that a job's calling a job calling a job. It just looks like one history to them. All right, so here's sort of the guts of this the shared tools project. These are all the function jobs for this one particular company. A few of the microservices we deploy here use Terraform to do the deployment. And under the hood, this job, this Terragrunt run, so this is Terragrunt running Terraform, is cloning their Terragrunt config repository, or it's also called a live repository, updating the value, which is the version to be deployed, and then running Terraform Terragrunt to do that deployment. All right, so this is the wrapper job that calls it, right? It's very simple. This is their CPQ Django project, or basically a repository, but job that goes to deploy that repository. And this, interestingly, we'll see here in a second, actually does do, Martin, what we were talking about earlier with deploying two different things in one job execution that are coming from two different code repositories. So, the developer comes in here, chooses the environment, the version to deploy. In some cases, that can be either pre-populated or chosen from a pick list. Or it can be fully automated with just this being a webhook instead of a human hitting the button. They hit the button in Slack and it triggers it with everything it needs. They can add like a Jira release and then just click run. I mean, it's 2 seconds for somebody to come out here and do it, right? Job structure. So this is the inside of that Terraform or Terragrunt run job that we saw earlier. This is wrapping a number of other jobs. In fact, I think, what are we seeing? 5 different steps here, and only one of them is like a script. It's just calling other jobs to do various things. And so step 3 there is calling that, calling that function job or that utility job, passing it in some of the options from this job. And the one after that is actually running a migration. So this is kind of that example we talked about earlier, where the first thing it does is it deploys the arrow job here, or 3 here, or step 3 is deploying a container into ECS, and then step 4 is cloning a repository at that same version and then running a Django migration. So 2 different repositories, and we're orchestrating them together instead of them being isolated, GitHub action per project, and somebody has to go click deploy over here and then deploy over there. And then just a quick, this is a quick, Forrest, you talked about Grafana. I'm a huge Grafana fan. Also, this is a deployments dashboard, which, all of our deployments send a little message to this service that records the deployments that happened. And you can see there's a Rundeck job column here where, somebody can click that for whatever that number is, 4332, hard to see on my screen for some reason, to see, okay, well, what happened? And you can see in that line that, oh, it was the development environment. This is the thing we deployed. This was the version. This is the Rundeck job. I'm the one that did it. Status was success, yada, yada, yada. And then you click that link and then you're just brought right here. So if we're talking about observability, how awesome is this? Like, you get to see from that sort of central Grafana dashboard here, you can dig in and you can see exactly what was deployed, what the parameters were, the options were. If this was a failure, you're going directly into the output to, in that bottom panel to see what the heck happened and troubleshoot from there.
What's the backend for the Grafana? Are you feeding that to like a time series database, or is it pulling directly from Rundeck?
Good question. No, it is sort of an isolated service that it's an API that I wrote that stores data in Postgres, and then this is just
Okay.
pulling from Postgres.
So you're just feeding that data as part of the job execution? Like, is that where it gets the execution number and whether, all those other details?
Yep, exactly. Okay, so nearing the end here, we just saw a few of my use cases, but zooming out, why Rundeck? I've seen all kinds of clunky attempts at homegrown automation and orchestration of automation using different tools. Like I've seen, walked into a company and they've just got like an EC2 with a crap ton of cron jobs on it. And it's a nightmare and it goes down and nobody remembers what this one does or how it works. N number of lambdas triggered by CloudWatch events from people that no longer work for the company and didn't realize that thing was running anymore, and so on from there. Rundeck's a highly flexible platform, which sort of gives you, we talked about this earlier, gives you everything around the automation, that the thing that you want to do, the code that you're writing, so you don't have to build it, right? So you can automate anything in any language, tech stack, and cloud you like. It's your, intuitive and central interface. So whatever the heck is happening under the hood, the interface is always the same for your users. You're not sending them 10 different places to do a thing. And you get the same guardrails we talked about, protecting your automations with granular RBAC. You have logging, alerting, source control on your jobs out of the gate. Is it still a plugin, the SCM plugin, or is it more sort of native now? I forget.
It's still a plugin.
All right. And then, secret storage for your automations and more. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff you don't need to think about with Rundeck when you want to go automate something. You just kind of need to think about your code and know where to put it.
And you're right, the secrets can still be stored in the platform. Many do. I did see that with like a larger organization that tend to get into something like HashiCorp Vault or CyberArk, or we also support those. But for that the enterprise version is there. But definitely the integrated Vault is doing its job.
Yeah.
I believe our Vault plugin is open source as well to align with their,
nice.
Open source licensing dynamics, and I'm pretty sure it was started by the community. So that's a plug for anyone willing to take on plugin development. If you start it, the Ansible plugin's another great example, completely started by the community. It's a point that the owners of those have decided, we're just kind of done managing this project. our pet project is done, and we we'll take it on if it's got enough momentum.
Oh, that's great. Is there one by chance for AWS Secrets Manager?
Yeah.
Yes, that is in our enterprise product.
Awesome.
It was released earlier this year, and we even more recently did the Azure Secrets Manager.
Oh, very cool. All right. I'm behind the times. I need to get my hands around that. All right. In closing, I really have always described Rundeck as the Swiss Army knife of automation. You're really only limited by your imagination. You can model, and automate any business process, keep it sane, safe, compliant. And it couldn't be more of a fan, which is why I'm here. And I got to be the first one, I guess, to speak at one of these. So I'll wear that badge proudly. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for showing up today to the webinar. Thanks again to the PagerDuty team. My contact info is here on the screen. Feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions, anything you saw here on the call, or if I can be any assistance to you and your development and DevOps efforts. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I have a question for you, a bigger question than what we were saying before. So you mentioned at the start that you're currently working on some, data science projects. How do you see the merging of a tool like Rundeck and in the world of data science?
Yeah, I think it can be used for, well, I guess this is more data engineering. I think it can be used for some ETL orchestration. We talked a little bit about that before the call, in kind of more of a linear way, unless you're sort of writing some flow logic glue code that would then, if this thing happens, call that job. I haven't really gotten too far into that. But I heard from you that's sort of a growing use case, it sounds like.
Yeah, we are seeing more and more use cases for ETL type of operations, right? It's that repetitive task that happens over and over again. I guess that feeds into the science program comes later, right? But one of our longtime, originally OSS was commercial for a while, back to OSS customers have used that extensively, writing their own custom plugins, etc.
And Phil, one for me, and one question I've been thinking about a lot myself, but in the world of AI agents, you've seen it now, it could do basically everything, you would say. So how do you see, let's say, a platform like Rundeck still having value in an era where it just codes and runs and does whatever it needs to do? What's your view on that?
I think, again, the big value add when we're talking about automation is, again, all the things you don't have to think about. Can an AI agent do everything, or could you give it tools to run certain types of projects or jobs within that it only has access to certain projects? I think what you don't get perhaps with just, hey, ChatGPT, go do X, is all of the I guess the governance and compliance stuff around it, the logging, the auditing, the just the same controls around things, the observability. So I really see Rundeck as and I think everybody kind of hopes the future with AI looks like this, where there's still a human behind the wheel, right? And as long as that's the case, a tool like Rundeck, can kind of be that interface and that wheel, right? Without fully giving over control to something else and hoping for the best.
Yeah. It sounds like we prepared this question, but we didn't. But I am with you. You need a level of control and maybe even looking backwards. Like, what did the AI do? Was it good? Was it bad? The ability to look backwards in time. You don't have it if it just runs and does whatever it needs to do, but you do if you use the Rundeck platform. Yeah.
Yeah, I look at it as two different mindsets, right? Rundeck and the use cases, like Phil, described very well, is that repeatable, do the same thing, dry version of keep doing this. If you ask an AI agent the same question today and tomorrow, you're going to get different answers. And that can be nervous for anyone getting into or getting started with automation, right? We've had that question for as long as I've been working with Rundeck, is how do I get started? I'm a little bit nervous about just automating the things. So AI can definitely help you learn, what could I automate? What should I automate? How would I approach it? But as far as that, like, I want to do this same thing each time, either at this time or, through this person, without breaking stuff or without changing my mind about how I want to do it, that's, where a tool like this will help.
But this is good. This is a good discussion. So data insights. The Rundeck platform already has an audit trail. But if you want to look at it let's say in detail about job execution, there was still something missing. And there is a plugin out there that gives a little bit more granular insight in the running of jobs, where you can select the jobs within a project that you want to look at and then see the success rate. So on the left diagram, you sort of see the two selected jobs and the percentage of the jobs being successful, whereas you can see over time the quality of the job and the job execution improved until 100%. On the right, you can see the jobs running on a certain day, where you obviously see during lunch, there's no job execution, probably nothing scheduled, but basically getting more insight into what the platform is actually executing. And again, this is just selected on 2 jobs within a project, but you can select multiple of those in another time frame if you need. So available for people to use, open source. I would say download, look at it and use it. But then I was asking Forrest in this case, man, I need something more tangible. Like, a lot of people run automation and I want to tell Mr. Manager like the value that the platform brings. If you use the Rundeck platform and you run an X amount of jobs per day, you probably save a lot of time. But how do you quantify that? How do you prove that? And yeah, then Forrest was so good to spend some time on it, and he will probably explain how he did it. But basically, we now have an ROI plugin. And yeah, I need to be honest to people, this is for our enterprise clients. But within the job itself, you can say, well, I want this job to be part of the metrics on ROI. So you select it, then you fill in the time it saves versus doing it manually. So this like 25% would be a quarter of an hour. Then you run the job, and you don't look at it every day, of course, but you run the job. Prior to running it, you could fill in the money savings as well. So like an hourly wage. And then in a graph, over time, you can see how it's been building up the value that the platform brings, as well as in a whole project level. So you can see the per job or in a project. So some of the jobs obviously would save less time, others save an immense amount of time, completely depending on the use case. But having clear insight in value of job execution is now available, and yeah, that makes a lot of people happy. I also sort of see it as a sort of a gamification among developers, like which of the developers could make a job which is the best one in terms of time saving, and then give some sort of award. I mean, I would do that in my organization if I would use the platform. But yeah, again, having an insight and value is now available, and yeah, I'm very, very happy that we have that. But yeah, Forrest, maybe good for you now to take over. Like, how did you sort of get up and create this?
Yeah, so this started quite a while ago with an ROI metrics plugin that did what Martin mentioned. I'm gonna actually stay on that previous
Okay.
slide.
Yeah.
It we added that I think back in the 4.x series of versions where you could just tag, hey, if I run this job, I know that it's saving me 15 minutes of time every time, with every time I run that task. And that was based on feedback we got from customers that were actually trying to measure ROI of these things, and they were tracking it in different spreadsheets and other ways. So they would actually sit down and watch someone walk through the process manually, time it, right? Okay, that took a half an hour. What if I give you a play button, a little green button to click, and now it takes you no time, right? So we saved a half an hour for that subject matter expert, and they want to track that per execution. So we've had that plugin for quite a while. Again, touting the community and the value that they bring, one of our customers wrote a UI plugin to visualize that data. We hadn't gotten around necessarily to that step, but they gave us that head start of, you can write a UI plugin. The instructions are all out there on the docs website. I'll try and post a link before we close out of here. But this individual wrote that. I'm going to see if we can get him to join us for one of these and talk a little bit about that. I took that code then, and I am not a developer. I manage a technical product, but I am definitely not a developer. It flashed on the screen a second ago, but I employed the help of Claude, my new best friend Claude, over a weekend, and took his code and was able to build it into this, right? His code, had some stuff that was hard coded, and it was it worked for them. But I wanted to add, a lot more to it. And Claude was actually the one that recommended adding the graphs. I really just asked him, can we make the hourly cost a variable rather than hard coded at $100 an hour? They knew that they wanted to use $100 an hour. So they just put it in the code. I wanted to let people pick the value. And then Claude said, hey, what if we put some graphs on here? Hey, what if we put some other, summation metrics on here? And it walked through and generated all that UI code for us. There were some iterations, and there were some, I definitely got down my own, personal rabbit hole of like seeing now how far I could push the thing and what I could do to clean up the code. Being a not developer, but the start, the ideation, and like just getting a bunch of functioning code started was huge. I submitted it to our engineering team, and they were able to run with it just to formalize it, right? Just to make it production ready. One of our great engineers, Sarah, spent time on it. she worked on the performance, making sure it's going to be performant with a ton of executions and a ton of jobs and whatever else. And subsequently, I actually started with the ROI plugin, and then I was able to build the job metrics plugin based on that code, right? So once I had that great working example of the ROI one, I just dropped that example in and said, I want to do the same thing for this other API endpoint. And it built it out. That one went far faster than the initial iteration. But that's the legacy of these things, and that's the power that something like Claude can bring to further enhancing all of the use cases that Phil was talking about, right? Phil said, bring your code. You don't actually even have to type scripts into our script step. You can write it as a plugin, right? And then manage that plugin code and execute it everywhere. I have other customers that like to build a job step as a script plugin. That way they don't have to go update that particular script across 5, 8, 100 different steps buried in different jobs. They can just update the plugin and they know that it's going to do the same thing in all those other jobs. So yes, Claude is not just a pair programmer. It really does just, crank things out for you and turns things into production products. And I think there was a question. What is the level of AI coding within the Rundeck product team? So the team is absolutely using it. We're fortunate enough to have access to GitHub's Copilot program. I use that extensively, maybe to the dismay of our engineering team, because now I'm throwing a lot more PRs at them to do CVE fixes or little touch-ups here and there, where before I would never know where to go and look inside all of that Java code to go fix a typo or something along those lines. I can now just ask Claude, hey, I think it's somewhere around here. Can you help me do this thing? And it gives me some ideas. Again, you still have to validate it. We still run it through hands-on developers, our testing frameworks, etc. But it absolutely accelerates the game.
And I love Ken Reinterson's remark there that it's indeed a great way to justify product. Yeah, for people that are non-technical, for sure.
That's very true, Ken. So I did some survey market research about 1.5 years ago, and it was beyond the Rundeck sphere. It was a broader automation, understanding. And in talking with some of those automation, experts, the ones that had really built out a big comprehensive automation program at their company, what they saw was that advertising the benefits to other teams had the most impact. So one customer even personified it, right? Gave it a name and said, look what, kind of like Claude, right? We've personified Claude, and he's my new BFF when I have to write some code. They personified the automation program and then put dashboards up similar to the ROI dashboard of look what automation did today. It saved this much. It saved the business this much money for this department. Are you saving money too using automation?
Makes me think, Forrest, maybe we need to add like which developer made which jobs. Like a developer is more productive versus another developer. Maybe we should add that. There was one for us if you can export the ROI data towards an external data analysis platform.
Yes, you can export that ROI data as well. Everything in our UI is gathered via the API, right? So there's an API call to get that ROI data. It is documented in our API docs. It's very similar to getting executions. It's tied to an execution. You just change the endpoint slightly and iterate over that to pick up the data that you want. Great. Well, I'd say, Phil, thank you very much for joining from the outside, being our first guest here, and look forward to working with you more.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good day, all. Cheerio.
Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.